Today, we're going to focus on the sensations from a foundation of opening up through the rib cage in the beginning. So, how you blend into that, how you use your props to blend the body into that foundation is going to be up to you in some ways, but I'm going to demonstrate what I think would be a good beginning. So, you can have a bolster across the mat and then your block right in front, so it's horizontal. It's at the lowest setting. However, moving it up a little bit sometimes is kind of nice for the hip flexors and the psoas, but I like to start with kind of the basic terrain of my kind of the curves of my body. So the block may be a tad lower than your bolster, like a little bit. And when you sit on that block, okay, you're going to have a couple blankets or towels, whatever you have stacked up, that's about the height of the bolster, and a belt behind that. That'll be easy to reach. And as you lower back, kind of feel where in the ribs can you create a foundation, okay? Now, this doesn't mean the block has to be perfectly touching the bolster. Sometimes when I recline, I would probably do some good work if I fuss around a little bit. I'm a little close to the wall. I want to have my legs eventually straighten out, maybe. But beginnings are essential to kind of feel the centering of the body on the props, the block, the bolster, and the blankets before you stand up. Okay, so with the spine and the rib cage kind of having this medley of pressure and lift, right? You can add a sandbag if you feel like you want to add sensation, right? So the sandbag is going to kind of wake up the breathing muscles. And so if they're feeling already awake when you lie back in the pose, you don't have to add a sandbag, okay? But it is nice to kind of feel where the sandbag could be supportive, whether it's across the ribs or it's down to the tops of the thighs, right? If you extend your legs down, okay, they can extend. But give yourself some time if you do straighten the legs or if you bring the soles of the feet together and the knees out to not necessarily compare that the pose should be this way or that way. But the nice thing about Zoom is you get kind of an outline and you don't generally compare in the little boxes on the screen, right, what your pose should be like. You can follow the guidelines of the chest opener right now, the ribs and the chest. And as you sort out the circulation with your breathing muscles, maybe you move the legs even back to kind of square one with the knees pointing up and the feet, soles of the feet down. Okay, so as we sense opening the ribs, the chest, stretching the spine, we just deliver the breath, and as we feel that inhale, it's an invitation to begin the practice, right? An inhale as we find the shape and we find balance inside, even though you might feel like I'm pretty balanced, I'm not falling over, I don't have a risk of that. But inside, there are challenges, right, with this pulling pattern in the muscles, the directional pull in the organs. So truly feel that potency of the breath to settle the inner space and reorganize the spaces that you breathe into. Feeling the weight of your head relaxing. Feeling the shoulders centering back. Now, if you start to straighten out the legs or entertain that feel of reach, opening up the chest, even with that orientation of shoulders back and downward. So the lower ribs flow around that back space. Okay, now either keeping the sand on, or you can remove it or shift it on the body, right? That's an option. Even if I have my legs straight down, sometimes the sand feels really helpful. Sometimes moving it higher feels better. But I want you to explore getting a hold of your belt overhead and start with small motions of holding it a little wider than shoulder width, and you don't have to measure it and be super precise. Feel when the elbows bend and the hands hold onto the belt like 70% of your maximum grip, right? Feel that it almost gives a little bit of stretch into the hand. It's not all tightening up the onto the belt, but a little bit of awareness of your hands. And then move your belt just straight over the chest towards the ceiling. Breathing. And then as you move your belt back overhead, or your arms holding onto the belt, you maybe feel a bending of the elbows, maybe feel an extension like you're trying to straighten out. And this would be an opportunity for you if you want to move your blanket down to 1. I just feel like I need 2 blankets today. This feels like kind of an essential. But if you want to move down to 1 and feel if that's better on your neck, but if it feels comfortable, I wouldn't don't mess with comfort. Okay. Stay with it if it's fairly comfortable. And alternate that motion so your arms reach back overhead. And then you move so they're straight over the chest. Now, final kind of thoughts on this one. Elbows bending, like if you were holding like a weight, right? And you're going to push straight up, or one of the bars, right, to push up. You want your elbows to bend on this one right now outwards. And then as you in-breath, ribs kind of flare out, belly soft. And then as you exhale, you'll move your arms over so the diaphragm glides up towards the heart. It'll do that anyway. Okay. But as you kind of feel that tone in your arms, take the final few moments where there is toning, right? There's contracting of muscles. There's a bit of energy and heat and blood flow into the arms and the shoulders and into the ribs. And just let go of the belt and let your arms relax back out to the sides for a few moments. It's good to experience sensation that builds, and then a moment of reflection, restoration of those areas. Now walking your feet in towards your seat, if they're not already there, and move your sand to the left. And we're going to take a little bit of a roll out through the ribs. Now, if you want to keep your block under your seat, fine. I'm going to be extra careful about just the organization of the bones. So that seems to be the safest option for me. But if I move the block out, then it creates more arch. And some people like that arch. So you can slide the block out, keep that arch while you're rolling to the left. And as you go left, right, you're pushing a little bit into your left arm, but also the ribs on the bolster. And then walk on in, move your block from your seat area to the other side of your blankets. And let's get a ball. Now, if you have a kind of a soft, whether it's one of these knobby balls or a Pilates ball, those work fine for this one. So my legs were this way, and then I'm just shifting them that way. So it's kind of the windshield wiper leg path to the left. And the knee, might need something under it. This is probably one where you don't want to put like a lot of bulk under your knee to pull it this way. You might want to have, if you need a little towel under it, that's okay. But I don't want you to pry the knee up, okay, for this one. Okay, so I'm going to turn. Now that could also mean your legs stack, right? If your knee is like, I hurt, just don't push it this direction. So ball is at the left rib cage. And when I lean into it, we're all different lengths in our torso, right? So some of you might find, well, I'm all up here. So lean into the ball like it's on the left side of your digestive tract, okay? And hands on the floor, okay, between the bolster and the blankets. Okay, so think spleenish here. Spleenish, not squeamish, spleenish. And you're gonna just massage a little bit on that left side. So I've got the ball here, and as I lean in, I put it kind of downwards in my rib cage, right? It's not necessarily, so it's what's protecting my organs. And you're just going side to side, kind of like typewriter motion, side to side. Just getting some heat into that left side, breathing. Okay, now the back space might feel a little bit more tone, like pressure on the left hand, right, realistically. So what I want you to do is just turn to the left, keep the left hand down on the floor, turn the rib cage towards the right side, towards the ceiling, stretch your right arm up. You know how we do side stretches, right? We do side sage, we do seated side stretches. So I want you just to feel that left elbow bending and then stretching overhead with that right arm, and take one more twist to your left. So hands both on the floor besides in the other side of the bolster, and turn. And you might find that you can actually get your waist to go a little bit further to the left. I don't expect you to be an owl or anything, but from this motion, we kind of give a little more flexibility in the core. Okay, it's my favorite core stuff. Okay, now last one, we'll just put the ball down under the right knee. Okay, take a side sage pose. That sounds cozy. So pull the blankets in so you have a good stack. And the block is on the other side on the high setting. Okay, and then once we lean in, we're trying to kind of lengthen this area out, but with comfort. So I'm not going to try to pull on my hip or anything. I'm just going to add my sand to the outer right hip if you're using a sandbag. And the left arm is between the bolster and the blankets. And I need more blanket. So as I lean down, if my neck is feeling like it can't quite stretch this far or it grips up, I can take my blanket or my towel, whatever you have, and fold it once more and feel at the side of the skull, right, that support. And the block overhead is an option. Notice the sensation in the throat. This is something I've been, I think when you practice for a while, you start to notice a little bit of different subtle things with circulation in the body. Once you kind of get sort of past the lineup of the pose, then there's that energy, that circulation into the throat. So with the arm reaching overhead, let the waist settle, let the right side body lengthen, and breathe. Reset anytime you need. So if you decide, I don't want to reach overhead, you can have the right arm down on your side or on the bolster. You can even carefully roll on the back of your head and keep that right armpit chest open. Okay, so if the right knee is comfortable with the ball on the inner side, or if you use a block instead, finding that ability to relax the tailbone, but not trying to tuck the tailbone under, not trying to push the hips back, but just find neutral pelvis so that you can reach out of the pelvic area with the rib cage, the arm, and then maybe feeling that you can relax your neck. That's probably not going to be a limb you're going to try to push and lengthen out of, like your limbic brain, right? I'm not going to try to reach my chin up. I'm just going to relax my head. Let's take a few moments here. Just find where you can settle with the shape of side sage and breathe. Feeling how the abdomen moves, right? It has an ability to stretch and have some flexibility with your breathing kind of order. You get some order in the body with intentional breath. And so kind of this is an invitation to relax that concentration, right? So we have kind of the breath concentrate in our practice sometimes. So let's come into a sleeping sage where you can relax that, right? You can move the sand off your hip or your side body. And then as I turn, right, I'm going to turn in towards the bolster, like with the belly downwards, not necessarily navel on bolster. This is why this ball is not going to be super helpful, right? Again, I don't want to be pulling my knee up because I'm turning in towards the bolster, okay? So take the bolster and just turn it up so you make a little bit of a ramp. Blanket underneath, blanket on top, a bolster sandwich here, okay? Don't take a bite out of it. Okay, so when you turn the right front thigh, right, this front space, and into the psoas is getting this interesting rotation. So navel to the bolster, of course. Relax your idea of trying to get it to touch deeply, and then let your head turn to the right, and relax your shoulders and your arms. Right, so feeling how the arms motion out. Or they don't, right? Maybe for you, it's better to kind of hug your bolster, okay? Or have your palms open. I find if I have my hands down, that works best for my shoulders and neck to relax. But you might slide your arms a little lower or maybe even a little bit higher or rest them on the blanket that's under the bolster. You know, another option would be to put the arms on the blocks. Okay, so if you're in some sort of shoulder rehabilitation, that might be helpful, and it might not. So as we relax into the sleeping sage pose, and no breath control, just let it go. Now slide the hands under the shoulders and then turn, thighs resting together to the left. And then as my hands press down, lifting the chest slightly and then pivot so the knees are under the hips. And then we come into a cat pose. So round your back, flex the spine, chin to chest. Inhale, arch the back. Try to go a little slower than you usually do with the arch. See how you can feature the movement of the ribs versus just the pelvis, right? So I find when I go into cat pose now, flexing the spine, try that as you round the back and you move your chin towards your chest. That feels pretty comfy in my back, but when I move to stretch the front of the spine and the hips move back, you know, kind of feel as if you're trying to push a little bit into something with the front rib space, stretching the front of the spine. Okay, now next time you come through table, you can also do this on your elbows if it hurts your wrists, right? Come into just a lift of the knees up like a puppy pose and just let the hands push the floor away and let your head go between the arms to get the circulation to the brain. Now let's say this is just a lot, like uncomfy times 20, right? What would you do, right? Well, you can walk your feet towards your bolster and your hands back to your feet and take a forward fold, which I gotta admit, I kind of prefer this. Simply for the circulation, that directional flow back to my heart. Okay, so this is truly going to be head below heart because this is kind of as inverted as you can get. It's just not the most relaxing inversion. It's not like legs up, right? But it does have head below heart Even if you're up this, a little bit higher, you still have that. So hands relaxed down, hands holding elbows, or maybe you're still in puppy or down dog. Take just a couple more breaths. If this feels particularly satisfying for you to be in forward fold, you can always stay a little longer, okay? So feeling that traction from your legs to your pelvis, and then straight on down to the brain, to the computer. Okay, now relax the grip on the elbows. Okay, hands are going to walk forward, feet are going to walk on back. And then if you're in down dog, you just come on down to the knees and then take a cat pose for just a moment. Feel the spine curl and flex and head towards the heart. It might feel easier after your forward bend to do the cat pose. Like I feel like, wow, it's a little more comfortable. And then come back to arching. Okay, now let's move our bolster. So we're just going to turn it so it's across the mat, horizontal. And then as I add my blanket stacked up on the other side, I'm going to get ready for that little bit of a twisteroo with the ball. Okay, so lean into your right hip, take a seat. This is a nice way. We were at training and we're talking about when we do our twists, these are really probably our healthy aging twists, right? When we're letting everything kind of move together in rotation. We're not kind of boxing the hips and then forcing. So when we sit up next to that bolster, with the hips close, it doesn't have to be, right on it, but you're not sitting on top of the bolster, right? So I've got the ball to my right rib cage. I'm thinking liver area. So I kind of push down on the ball. Okay, now if it's like really uncomfortable digestively, right, you might have a little bit, you might even have more comfort on it, like maybe add a blanket on top of the bolster instead of using the ball, because maybe it's too much with the ball. But as you lean in, so let's say it's too much, right? Let's say this is like, ouch. You could, or maybe it's scar tissue or something, right? So you could have your blanket here instead, right? And do the movement, just an FYI in case the ball's too much. So hands on the floor, and you're just gonna shift a little side to side typewriter motion. Okay, so I'm pushing into the ball. Does the ball go right to the xiphoid? No, it stays kind of to the side. You're like, now she's talking to herself even more. Okay, so rib and then xiphoid would be here. So I'm kind of right in this ribs terrain, like if you kind of hold your hunk of ribs here, that hunk, right? That's about where you're massaging a little below, right? In this area. Okay. All right. Happy livers. Okay. Tis this fall season. Here we go, right? Circulation. Okay, now as I turn, now I'm gonna have my right hand stay on the ground. And I'm just gonna reach up with the left arm and just take that rotation, breathe. And then as I turn to the ball, I kind of like this ball with the teeth on it for this one, and then stretch the left arm over. I just really want you to do that one time. Okay, so you get a feel of that. If you want to repeat it, that's okay. And then just start to make your way into take the ball, move it under the left inner knee, okay? Take your sand, add it to the left hip, and then down your ribs go, kind of flowing over, the course of the props. It's like kind of river-like, right? The idea is this creates some fluidity in your body with these some of these poses, especially these, right? So when I lean in, I'm going to make sure the blanket is high enough so my neck feels okay. You don't have to touch the neck, but you might notice if it's, a little bit tightening up or tensing into the jaw. Just let your head relax. Like remind it, you can relax. It's okay. And then left arm stretches overhead. Maybe, okay, or maybe it opens the chest towards the ceiling. Maybe your hand is down on the hip or on the bolster. To simply receive the side body support. Like keep it simple. Doesn't need to be side body stretch. That side body massage, right? You're pushing into the prop, so that's putting circulation in the body, and then breathing. Okay, so creating a course of circulation internally. Taking a few more moments, feeling how this begins to condition the circulation in the pelvis, which is all about, motion or the center of gravity, and then into how we move is through the pelvis. Okay, so when you do start to set yourself in towards the sleeping sage pose, which is at your own pace, you already have a foundation right here. Your hip is centered. It's a perfect foundation. The only place I think it's important to kind of identify with and kind of feel that invitation to move is from the sacrum area, the base of the spine, and kind of up into the pelvis, right below pelvis, sacrum, and then feeling the movement weave through the ribs. Okay. So as I move the sand off, some of you are maybe talented and keep your sand on this one. I don't want to tug on my hip with the sand right now when I take the next position. So if anything, you might have somebody put a sandbag on your back, your shoulder blades, but not everybody has an assistant. Okay, so turning to the right, and then turn your bolster up on top of the blanket and your blanket on top of the short end of the bolster. Okay. I suppose some people might put their blanket like to their abdominals for a little bit more massage. I've had that in class and trainings, but I guess I'm okay with the rolling there, but I don't want to like push into a pose and have something stuck in my belly. So when I lower down, I'm going to let my head turn left, and then my arms relax. You let the weight of your head relax into the blanket and really span the breath in the back space, open it up in the back of the hips. Right. So as I mentioned, you're going to feel kind of pelvis, sacrum, iliac. So it's going to move up. And then this part in the low back keeps its familiar arch and foundation. Okay. What turns is the ribs. So letting your head also turn to where it's comfortable. And then relax the shoulders. Now, I no longer have the ball under my knee. I think that would probably be kind of contraindicated for the knee joint on this one. So if it's comfy for you to bring the legs to stack like a fetal position, that's completely fine. Okay. If it hurts the knee or anything to have it down by the foot, then make a change. Okay. But as the hip, the ribs turn, take a few more rounds of breath. And slide the hands in and then pressing to come upwards. And then let's find a way to arrive completely inverted here. So we're going to turn the bolster across the mat, right, horizontal. And you want some space between you and the wall. Okay, so if you are in wall, kind of near wall mode, have some space so you don't kick it. Okay. And as I lean back, right, I have my tailbone right at the edge of the center of the bolster. So when I lower down, I bring my feet up first and second, and then they're off the ground. So this kind of allows this mid body, okay, to start to get into this new foundation, right? So we've taken ourselves from the chest opener, but you know, I always find this interesting, but nobody else will probably, but that this is a chest opener, right? This inversion is a chest opener. It's a good one for your heart for certain. So but I tend to think chest openers are when there's something behind it, you know, are the ribs lifting it up. But I think if you do this pose, like with somebody brand new, they might be having trouble with the breath to try to get that baseline of comfort. So then you realize, oh, I guess I have some endurance with this. So sand is going to go to the soles of the feet. And we're going to do 2 times that today. So bring the sand to the soles of the feet and then go straight up. Okay. If you are averse to sanding your feet, don't worry about it. Nobody will know. Okay. So legs are elevating and think on that verticality. So if the legs don't go the other direction, or it would really be a little painful on your back, probably. And also, I'm not trying to move them over my chest. So I have to find just that perfect little nano knee bend, nano bend, the flexing, the arms open. Okay. And then simply settle. Okay, some people put a ball center of the thighs on this one, just about center of the knees. I've seen that quite helpful for people for their back, even though I know it's in the leg, but it seems to feel comfortable for the hips and then weave into your back muscles. So if you decide, I kind of want to try that, you can always do that instead of the sand as well. Like just toss the sand, put a ball center of the knees, right? Not a small one, you know, something that's a good 7-inch or a Pilates ball. That might be too big. Some of those are a little too big for that exercise, I think. Yeah, I remember we used to use those really big ones. Those are still fun to sit on and kind of bounce on. But we used to like put them between our feet and do exercises. I don't know if anyone still does that, but that was those are the good old days, things we did with props. So as the spine centers, because of the legs, right? The legs are usually walking our spine around. But right now, the legs are in service to my back. They're volunteering their time to help out. So now feel the difference if your arms go overhead, right? So you're noticing that. I mean, if you happen to have a block back there, you might even turn the block so it's in the wide setting and just hold on to it. But you could put it on the floor, right? So you don't have to be, energetically lifting up the weight, but just feeling that even distance with the arms, holding a block, lightly hold. Okay. I like having those kind of parallels because I've got the sand on my feet. Okay, it's an energy. I have the block between my hands. That's an energy as well. Okay, last few moments with this simple idea, legs up. Breathing. Feeling. Okay, now as you move your arms back down by your hips, you'll bend the legs, okay? And then once the knees bend in, you're gonna just take the sandbag off and let's move the left leg downwards. It doesn't have to be straight perfection wise, but I would say add a sandbag to the top of that left thigh And I'm going to keep mine a little closer to my left side of my abdomen and just kind of feel so that it can stretch the psoas a little bit. It's going to extend it, right? So kind of feel the ribs kind of wide, the left leg extending down, and options are many here. We can hug the back of the right thigh in. It could be very simple. This doesn't need to be a brain float, but it could be. So I kind of like doing this, right, for psoas release. I might do something like this with a foam roller that's really squishy. Um, so it's so the bolster works nice because it's definitely a little squishy like that. But it feels like it gives me that reach at the front kind of my lumbar right on that left side. But another option would be to take your belt, okay, and scoop up your foot if it's buckled up. This is where we want that. So big loop, buckle it up, connect the belt, and I think that's a little too ambitious for me. My leg is not that long. All right, shucks. Okay, so I'm going to tighten it up, but I want the loop to be big enough that if it's hanging from my foot, it could touch towards the crown of my head. So that's kind of your guesstimate here, right? Now, maybe a little bit smaller than that, just a little bit. Okay, now as I scoop up the back of my head, not my neck, maybe it's best to say just the back of your head, not your occiput, because the truth for me is I aim for the occiput, I aim for the shelf at the back of my head, and then I just kind of let it slide to where I feel like that's going to catch and hold, and then my hamstring gets a stretch. Okay, some days I don't feel that as much, but today it is. So I can sense where my knee is, this whole knee organization is lengthening. And I like that muscular kind of pull to reverse the directional pull on the leg muscles. So just letting your head lean back into the belt and just breathe. If the belt doesn't feel good at the back of your head, you don't have to use this. You can have your hands holding the belt. Maybe the belt's at the webbing of the thumb and the index and you stretch back overhead. Or maybe you're holding your knee for the last few moments here. So a brief brain float, but if you do enjoy it and want to stay longer, you certainly can. And people get a lot out of this traction. Kind of feel what it's like to lean your head back. The particles of the kind of the upper hamstring zone, where it kind of partitions with sensation on the left side of the hamstring or the right side of the hamstring. And just kind of feel if you bend your knee a little bit, does that help? Or does that feel better to have it straight? It's a new day, so you don't know. You'll have to find out as you practice. Okay, now let's all take the belt in the next few moments, or maybe not all. If you want to stay, like I said, you can. But as I move my head out of the belt, I'm going to move the belt to the ball of the foot so it's kind of perfectly where the calf can feel the sensation. And just simply pull and feeling if that sends energy into the lower leg, or maybe it's more for the upper leg for you. All the while, this left side is just stretching along and maybe doesn't even feel that it has any focus, but it is continuing to stretch the left side of the psoas. Okay, now let's do a little shifteroo. So when we bend the right knee, we take the belt off, and then I want you to stretch the right leg down, okay? And then move the sand across the tops of the thighs. Okay, and you might notice, oh, okay, subtly, there's a little difference on the left to the right. I hope there's something different. Okay, and it might be, just subtle. Unfortunately, the body it will go back to its held patterns pretty rapidly, but as we practice in the moment, right, feel how it steers circulation in the abdominals, lower abdominals especially here. And then I just slide the left foot in, bend the knee, and then I'm going to move my sand to the top of the right thigh. Yeah, I always find this is really interesting stuff, just sanding the quad or the thigh lid so as just something like this to practice on your own. I think will go a long way for the back, even for the hips, right? For me, this is an area that can get kind of, it just seems it gets stagnant, tightened up, and I try to do good things for it, but still it can be challenging. So left leg draws in. Now, some of us might be holding the knee or behind just the back of the leg and squeezing it in for some time. And recognize you're a little bit inverted here. So if it feels like you need to just catch your breath, just be present, that's okay. We're on the inversion plan here. Okay, so take the left leg up for those of us moving towards even leg extension or brain float. Okay, so we are working a bit on kind of endurance when we're upside down for periods with the bolster into the pelvis. So, again, if you have to catch your breath, what you might do is just remove the bolster and practice without it. That would be a little easier. But if you can tolerate it for your lungs, your breath force, using this as a strengthening practice. And again, you can always take breaks. So I've got the belt to my foot. Now this side feels, even though my other side's where I worry about the hyperextension, this side feels like it's kind of swinging into it with glee. Okay, so I might have to on the second side make a different length, right, or from the loop. Don't consider that it's got to be the same on that second side because it's likely not, right? Your hamstring flexibility is probably a little itty bit different from one side to the next. It's partially quadricep and hamstring here. Right quad stretches, left back line stretching. Kind of trace that the circulation goes not just the left leg, but up the left side of the back. Right, all the way to the left side of your neck, into the brain. So letting your head center back and breathing slow. Let's take about 5 more rounds of breath. Yeah, your right leg might have some different contributions on the second side to the shape. And it's not as if we're trying to get rid of the stretch or stretch so much we don't feel it or go past the range that we start in. It's fine to just set up right where you're at. Just stay where you're at. Okay, this is fine. This is enough. Otherwise, you really can't, set up the invitation to receive the pose. You're trying to go further, So the pose begins kind of when you want to get out or you want to shift it or make it more challenging. So just steady breath, just here and now. Okay, now bring your hands to the belt, slide it off the back of your head back to your blanket. And then as you reach for the belt up towards the foot, you can kind of climb your hands up on the belt. And then even with your eyes closed, you might feel the nuances of the belt being, sliding it a little higher, or maybe you need to slide it lower on the foot. But connecting to the stuff you walk on, right? The feet. They're not stuff, but foot stuff, right? The stuff of feet, a stuffy foot. So if I stretch up, right? It's going to also challenge, right, sinuses, right? When I have my legs this high up, and it challenges all of it. You can hear it in someone's voice when they teach inversions. It just changes it up. So if you're not congested, celebrate that. I'm upside down. I'm breathing okay. Okay. Now, when we start the crossover, I want you to move the sand this time first. So we just push it off the right thigh. So there's nothing holding us back. You're going to slide the right foot in a little bit and hold the belt with your right hand and cross the left leg over to the right. So give a little bit of bend into the knee and just pull. And find if you try to straighten out the leg or move it a little downstream, or if you bend the knee and you pull, what feels comfortable enough for you to, I don't think comfortable is the word, right? It's kind of on an excursion, it's on a hip excursion here. So we're feeling kind of navel center towards ceiling. That's not rolling, okay? And then I have this kind of structural pull from my hip across to the leg, right? It's nice to have a leg because it's going to help my hip stretch, right? So good for that. And the bottom leg, the right leg is bending. So I have my right knee pointed to the right side. Okay, now bending the left knee, pull, do a little bicep toning here, and then come back up through center. And then we just switch. And I think between the two sides, just have a moment. Don't do legs float yet. We'll do leg float so that the hip doesn't get kind of jolted or tightened up. We're going to go one hip to the next hip, and then we'll go inner hip. Okay. The inner hip, the middle way, the middle path here. So cross the right leg now to the left. Don't go in the middle. So hold on to the belt. Now, if you're feeling like one side, there's strain, there are different organs on the different sides. So there's all kinds of reasons. But kind of also feel where your connection is to your breathing muscles, to that vital flow in the body. Okay, and now on this side, I'm kind of not quite supported. So I might move a little more in the center of the bolster. It might be my arm and how I'm able to use my shoulder and my bicep. The shoulder is going to be affected by how you're pulling on the belt. So keep it really simple, just simple minds here, simple body motions. Take a few more moments with that crossover. Okay, now with the right knee bending by pulling on the belt, okay, I bring the left foot down, sole of the foot down, and then I try to actually step and lift up into both feet. So push into the belt out. So I'm just going to pivot my legs so it's leg float. So I got my belt connected, it's buckled up, and this might be too wide. In fact, I feel like I need to be a little further down my bolster. If your back isn't happy, like your back muscles are unhappy, you feel gripping, compression, change how you are on the bolster, even if it's like awkward. Use your side muscles of your spine to get a little bit downwards, or maybe you have to go the other direction. And then as I've got my loop, I'm just going to tighten it up so it's reasonable flexibility for me. And so for you, it might be closer, it might be farther apart. But as I have the legs in the belt, I'm going to turn my feet inward slightly. So my feet are in the belt, they turn in, and then I think the best part here is that directional flow back to the leg pits and then to the heart. So 70%, right, of those lymph vessels are just below the skin surface, right? 70% of the lymph system is just below. So we're trying to create more flexibility for these lymph vessels to drain. Okay, so how about high five to the lymph vessels right now? So drain it out. Okay, and it's only all these lymph collector sites, right? Leg pits, back of the knees, belly, throat, armpits. I think you're serving them all in this one. I can't think of an area that's not a collector site you're not serving in this pose. Anything upside down, okay? But probably not forehead down, right? So that when we had our first inversion of choice, which was standing forward fold, that wouldn't be a real energizing flow of lymph pose. That's the difference in that inversion, I guess. Come to mind, that's the difference. So legs up is your best one. Take a few more breaths here. So you might flex your feet. I guess we're getting three legs up versions today. That's kind of nice. Getting into fall the right way. And now if it's shaky, you hold the belt, right? If it's a little, you're a little jittery with it, no problem. You might bend the knees a little bit. You might grab a hold of the belt and maybe loosen it up a little so it's you still get a stretch, okay? But it is an inner leg focus, right? Although there might be other parts of the leg that, feel circulation. Okay, now, and we just don't do a whole lot of those during the day, right? We don't do a lot of squats, right? Squatting down to sit, just doesn't happen in our culture too often. So here we are working on this. So as you bend through your legs, we're going to grab a hold of the belt. We're going to pull on the belt towards our chest and the feet come together. Okay, knees bending. If you want to sway a little side to side, I recommend do that with the ball. So it's not as much strain on your low back. So I just take the belt off and then I grab the ball and place it center of your knees. And with it there, let your arms stretch open. Okay, just straight out to the sides. It could be kind of lackadaisical. They could be low. They could be right out from the shoulders or a little bit further back. And then the knees as they go side to side. Yeah, this is a nice move from the legs in a wide float into, I guess we could call this the knee float. The knee float. My knees definitely need some part of my lifestyle to be giving them a little float, a little release. So when my arms are open, this sets the stage to start to stretch from my leg part, but really my hip into my ribs. Okay, and the knees as they go side to side, they could also go to the side and then towards your arm, right? Like you're making a smiley face with the movement of the pelvis to the knees. So kind of swinging over and then towards your arm. And taking just a few more rounds of this. And now come back in center. Okay, knees to chest. And then as you take the bolster, you don't have to lift it up off the ground. That sounds excessive, huh? Just push it away. Just be a little delicate about it. You don't want to suddenly hit your back on the ground or your tailbone, right? So just move it, move it, move it, move it, move it. And then place your feet on the bolster. Okay. Now this, I think, my friends, I'm still trying to figure out, if it's too close, is that like ideal? Okay, because now I've really changed the terrain of what's under my pelvis. It's such a big change from having my pelvis on the bolster so long that I do feel like a draft. Okay, so when you push into your feet, create that arch. Like you could have your hands on the sides of the hips where they would slide in. That's enough of an arch. And then I'm going to move my tail. I hate to say tailbone under because I don't want you to feel like you have to do that often, but moving the spine to press into the floor as you lift the hips up. Arms overhead, shoulder flexibility, okay? And then lower down the spine. Arms are going to move with the lowering of the spine, okay? Okay, now finding when you're going through this, this is kind of our final spinal today, actually. So I want you to feel like you're touching into the shoulder blades when you lift the hips up a little itty bit. And then when you move your arms overhead, it's almost coming into like a shoulder stand prep, right? This is how you would kind of prepare for that pose, but we're just working the energetics of shoulder standing, right? Bridge pose is how you prep for it. Okay, now next time you come into bridge, I want to invite you to use a block. So because you won't be efforting as much, you'll be like, I'm just on the block. How nice is that? I can just put a block, lift up carefully, slide it under at the lowest setting for me. I'm just going to go low because when I have it low, I can feel the hinge at my hips. Now, not all of you like that. Some of you I know like to get the hip flexors to stretch. So if that's you, okay, what you might do in this one is feel the tail press down into the block. Okay, you've got to kind of find that mobility in the hips together, uniting. So then I would feel the hinge at my hips, and then I bring my knees up, my feet off the bolster, take the ball away, and then stretch my legs straight down. So that's for those of you that want a little more hip flexor reach. It's up to you. Okay. I'm always curious about just pelvic floor tone, hypertonic, all these different things, hypotonic in the pelvic floor. So I like to feel, okay, I can center my hips. Okay, I feel a moderate amount of tone, but it's not too much. It's not bearing down and tightening things. It just feels like a moderate reverse flow to my legs. I love that. Okay, both directions are right. Legs straight down without the ball or here. Take a few breaths, right? You could have your hands on your breathing muscle area, like your ribs, the sides of your abdomen, or the hands could be on the floor. And just feel the movement of the belly. And now, as you lift your hips up, feet on the bolster. So if your legs stretch down, just walk them back on the bolster without the ball, that's fine. And then lift the hips up and slide the block out. Okay, now find the slotum here. So feeling maybe between the blades, kind of halt there, breathe. It's a nice one to breathe into the upper lobes of the lungs, right? So if I have my hips up and I breathe, I'm touching that upper part of my back, right? With the pose, with my breath. It's very nice. And you don't have to have your blanket under your head. I forgot to mention that for this cycle, but this is that kind of day where it feels like I need a blanket. And then as I lower down the spine, instead of trying to squeeze the ball, I want you just to feel that lightness once you touch down to the base of the spine, even though it's a thicker vertebrae. But now there's a lightness because you're not holding it up. And then as your knees draw in, take the ball out and place it on the sacrum. It doesn't sound right, on the sacrum, right? So under you. Okay, but it is on sacrum. So tailbone, sacrum, same. The ball is big enough. It's going to include everything. Okay. But when I have the ball there, I'm just going to move my hips side to side. So wag your tail, wag it. Yeah, feeling that the ball kind of trickles a little bit out to the rear muscles. Yeah, just feeling that. I like to do this where I just kind of rest on the ball and take some breaths. But some people like to just move. They're movers. They're not staying stillers. Okay. So I've got to include both options. Okay, now position that ball so it's going to support the traction of the lumbar. So my right foot's going to lift, cross the right ankle to the left knee. And then step one, I stay here in figure four. I don't have to move my knees to my chest, but I kind of feel like I should. I feel like this is I should do this moment. So you can bring your knees in, hold the back of the left thigh, or this is similar to pigeon pose, right? When I'm holding the left leg I want to have the right arm push into the right leg and feel that stretch in the hip. Okay. Another option that was that first one is that you could use your block on that. So the foot is on the bolster and you're pushing a little bit upper inner right thigh, probably not too low to the knee. And you could palpate it, right? You could turn the block so it kind of is, if you're finding this is better, I think the block kind of at the lowest setting works good because it gets a little more of the tissue. But why not try any of them? I know it seems like you should do this one, but if you can, you do it. But they're both pretty good. So taking the last few moments here in figure 4 or reclining pigeon. Okay, feel the lower back traction, right? The ball is placed there to kind of curate that arch. But if it feels like you're losing the arch, like the knee's drawing in and you're flattening it out, maybe the work for you is to let the left thigh push a little into your hands, away, so you have that resistance in the pelvic floor. This is a pretty dynamic pose. I can't go to sleep in it. Okay. All right, switch it out. If you want to do a leg tantrum in between, go for it. Okay, shake it out, little dead bug posing. Debug asana. Okay, left foot to the right knee. Right foot could be on bolster. Okay, I think an assessment is good on this one. So I'm going to go back to the first side and just kind of compare it. So kind of feel, how did my knee get to that challenge in the first place on that right side? So what I usually notice is that the side for me that's more flexible is the side I have the arthritis. That's where it's living it up. And the other side, not so much. So that's the story I've told myself all this time. Don't focus on flexibility, focus on stability, get some good range of motion. That's going to be a good plan. I think for all of us, not overly overstretch. So I've got my foot off the bolster, but you don't have to. You can keep it on. You could even stretch it up, the leg up. Okay, so hands at the back of the right thigh. And hey, if you're a little limited to get the hands to the back of the thigh, you can use a belt. And you certainly don't have to pull your leg in. Okay, there's something to be said for this resistance, right? So my leg kind of pushes into my hands. And then I have a little bit of a kind of a little tension here to try to stretch down into my back and breathe, just breathing. We're going to go right into our hip crossovers after this. So take the time to kind of warm up the left hip. If this is no longer a big stretch for you, right, that's something to learn, right? Still a good circulation event, this pose. Okay, so yeah, who knows what your tolerance is, right, on these, but stay with the simple stuff, right? Feel as you let go of the leg, your foot on the bolster. If you had your foot on the bolster that whole time, if you have the block pushing the thigh, you're going to start to move to the frontal hip bones being a little neutral. So I uncross the left foot from the right knee, and then I'm going to move my feet to press to the heels. And then I think your best move here is to just tilt to your left so it's easy to move the ball to the right rear. Okay. Don't want you to grip your glutes to get on the ball. I want you to be able to lean your knees and then just let the ball place it at the right rear. Okay, kind of if you were to touch to your, not your sitting bone, right? You're at the right rear side, kind of at the glute medius area. So when you're on your back, you have your feet on the bolster, the ball is about here, okay? But when you're moving and kind of modulating that dermal pull, that shearing, we're glute shearers here, the glute shear, okay? So, the tissues are going to feel the response, and the softer ball might feel pretty easeful for us at this point. But it's still giving you that nice glide across that collagen, that tone. And again, the focus of that lymph pull, right? That lymph massage. Since it's a softer ball, right, versus a tennis ball, it will be a little more productive in that arena, okay? A little more soothing. Okay, now when you move it over to the glute 2, just lean to your left rear, take the ball out from the right, and then move the knees to the right and tuck the ball into the left. Okay, you get to decide, does it go probably not too high, right? That's, you want to kind of feel, okay, rear ball. Okay, then we glide across. Okay, you get to decide how you steer on the ball. You might go just feet on the bolster. You might kick a leg up, kind of feel as you turn into it. And as we feel that concentrating through the glutes, we let our head relax back and breathe. And just feeling that tone, loosening up the tension. You know, it may even feel like by the end of class, you've taken a little bit of it out, just tease the tissues. Okay, and now as you lower down to the right rear, take your feet to the bolster, take your feet to the bolster and push the bolster to the right side. Okay, here's my offering today on this one, my invitation to you. Okay, so ball goes to the left. Okay, now I'm gonna shift it, so I'm gonna move my bolster on top of the block. I've liked this lately. So, you know, you have people advise put a blanket on top. Okay, so I have my bolster. I'll straighten out my legs so you can see. So I'm going to put a block under the short end of the bolster, so my leg's going to come up to here. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Georgie, you have to be careful about that because Raider might run over, huh? Okay, so left leg swings over to the bolster and it goes kind of high up, right? Now this might make it a little challenging to get your sand to stay. This is going to make it hopefully a little more of that shifting of that drain into the adductor, right? This lymphy nodey area here. So I kind of like this, sometimes minus the sandbag, open out the arms. It takes me time to kind of get the bottom leg, the right leg, bending enough so that I can situate on the back corner of my right hip where I had the ball before, okay? That's where you're rolling the ball, is on that glute medius. Now, if you're thinking, I gotta get my sand, you don't have to use this block under your bolster if you don't like it. Okay, there's no have to's. It's just an offering, okay? And you can still try using your sand, okay? On the outer left leg, to the knee, to the hip, okay? So feeling a few moments here. The abdominals might be able to you might be able to do a typewriter shift there. So you can feel the back chamber of the ribs. And with your left arm open, kind of settle with or without sand. It's completely an option. Maybe roll your head to the left. You know, let your head come back to center. Do a little bit of a check-in on how far that leg is crossing over, and as far as how you are on side one, because you want to make as much of a duplicate of this on side two as possible. So just kind of scan sensation. Okay. Probably better from the just letting your eyes close and kind of feeling into it versus staring it down. Okay, and take the sand off if you have it. And then when you do switch sides, I mean, you could flip the other direction, right, if you want to, but that might be a little challenging, but you could. Take the block over to side two, and then the bolster to that left side if you're using this block. Now, I got my block on the, across, so it's easy to put my bolster on. I'm playing with this right for the inner leg, just for a study I'm in, like a work group, right, for restorative. So it is a little bit of like, okay, how does this change the flow in the tissues? And not just like muscles, right? This is for the lymph. So I'm kind of hugging the bolster. Some people will do this where they have the bolsters between the thighs, like remember like those pregnancy pillows people would get, that's kind of like that. Um, but so you can do that as well. Or you don't even have to follow this at all. You can do your old school variation that you are delighted to do without the block. Okay. With the ball at your sacrum, right? So sand to that right thigh. Now it might be the same height on this side. You're sort of the same in proximity to the bolster, but the sand doesn't fit the same way. So you are kind of gluing it together. You're kind of smushing it in with the bones. Okay. Weight on the bones, generating force. That's the sand idea. So it's fairly simple, but with your right arm open, let the left knee bend a lot and let your head just roll to the right. And just feeling, it's all going to get washed away in our last pose. So if it's kind of a build up in your back and this is too much height with the block, just carefully move it aside. It doesn't need to be what you use. I'd say one side feels a little bit more comfortable than the other for me, very clearly. Even though I think I set them up pretty evenly, it's just a little different. So if your head rolls to the right, giving your body some equilibrium, at least a fair chance on the second side. Really stretching into the hips here and the pelvis and the bones. Take about 4 more rounds of breath. Now slide the sand off and start to make your way to legs up the wall. Now, if you don't do legs up the wall, you could also make a bolster bench, right? So if you're just feeling like the wall situation's just not of interest to you, you can certainly roll to the side. Now, this is an okay time to bring your knees to your chest as well before you go to the wall. So if you're feeling like, yes, I want that evenness in my back and my pelvis, hug them in, perfectly a good opportunity for that. Some people like to just roll to the side and get ready for the next pose. Okay. And they're both okay. So I'm going to show bolster bench just in case you're not going to put your bolster at the base of the wall and get your legs all tip top tall. Okay. So I put a couple blocks down at the second setting. I think second setting's the best. I mean, the third, I just never feel confident on it. So maybe you do. Bolster goes on top. If you got 2 blankets, I'd say add that second blanket on the bolster bench, the BB, the bolster bench, and then your legs up here, and then relax back. Ta-da! Okay. The rest of us are going to put our bolster not on our blocks. Oh, have you ever tried that? Have you tried a bolster bench, legs up the wall? I'm sure there are schools that teach that. Okay. It's quite the inversion. I have to admit, I have not tried it. So something to try. Eye pillows are invited here. Okay. Sit on the edge of the bolster, and then you're going to roll on your sacrum. I think that's my favorite cue for that. So it does require shoulder flexibility to get here. So if you're feeling like I'm just not up for the wall thing, it's not just not just a hip and a back thing. It's a shoulder thing too. So just give yourself that opportunity. Have some compassion. Find where it works okay for you. Legs are lifted for me. My seat is close-ish to the wall. And that's perfect. I want to find an ability to let my tailbone rest. And that for me is what I'm kind of still trying to work my way towards, because that's a great cue, is tailbone presses into the bolster. Okay. So if you can't feel that, you know what? Your sand will help you, because a sandbag is only going to help you feel more circulation through the legs, I think. Okay. I could be incorrect, but when I'm here, I've got my legs a little bit away from the wall, and then my work is on the chest opening. Okay, so kind of feel just that mellow tailbone resting, maybe pressing a little bit, and then resting. And then arms out in goalpost. If you have an eye pillow, it goes, I think, on your eyes. Okay. Placing that on. Or if you like to use, your towel or something over the eyes, or just your natural eye pillows, your eyelids. Doing a little bit of blinking maybe could be helpful before you close them up. And then reversing that flow back to the heart. Feeling how the abdominal organs motion with the breath. Really welcoming any inner sounds that come along, right? Kind of feeling the wave of moving inside with your breath. Perhaps if the breath stays kind of still, you might not have as much of that, inner vocals here. So find just the right amount of movement for you to center back to the heart. Relaxing the mouth, the jaw, and the facial muscles to soften. And let's take just a few more rounds here. So with this experience of opening in the chest, this nice foundation for opening the ribs, the breathing muscles, and even along the spine today. Okay, so shifting the feet away from the wall, just a tad. And then you can bend the knees and remove the sand, whether you toss it overhead or you place it by the side. If you're in bolster bench, right, you're going to simply shift the sand if it's on your ribs and bring your knees slowly towards your chest. And just feeling that clutching of upper extremities to lower. And be careful of the knees, right? If you feel just this little bit of pull across the frontal knee, that's not comfy, just get rid of that. Take the arms the other position. That's easier on the knees. And then as we feel the legs move into the abdominal organs, right, that gives you a nice little stretch into them. I know they're important to stretch too, the organs, right, with these poses. And then just roll to the side. Okay, go slow, there's no rush, or maybe you like to rush, but come on up and take a seat. Just a mini moment to unite our virtual community here. So you might let your eyes close Know that you're in a community for self-care is healthcare. So bring the palms together at the heart center. And as you kind of find that focus inside that vision of receiving the practice, just let a big breath enter in through your nose. Inhale, belly soft. And as you exhale,